Hi, everybody. So thanks for coming tonight. I'm going to go through the classic first few announcements, but because we've been having some technical difficulties, you won't be seeing all of the normal slides, but I'll be going through some of the same information before turning it over to Marge. So just a reminder, we're going to have webinars for the next few months. Next week or next month rather, we'll be have someone from American Bird Conservancy talking about window collisions and what you can do to stop those from happening. So another one of these hazards, but it'll be an in-depth dive on how to prevent those. And then we'll be having a bunch more topics through the end of the year. So please consider being a part of those. And then we're also, if you're in the Port Washington area, please consider ordering native plants for birds and pollinators and all those other good things that they do. Our fall sale will be opening shortly, and you can find more information about that on our Facebook or website, or sign up for our newsletter. And if you're interested in volunteering, as always, we would love to have you if you're in the area, and feel free to shoot me or Sarah an email when you get a recording of this presentation. And to that end, you'll be getting a recording like we do every month, and of this presentation, and that will be in a few days. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Marge, who is the co-executive director of the Raptor Education Group, Inc. And we're so happy to have this work out after a month of not quite working out. So take it away, Marge.
Okay. Well, it's great to be here, everybody, and I really appreciate your participation. Hazards to native birds are growing, and I think that it's really behooves all of us to have a part in fixing that and in trying to just play a role in trying to help. Just like every aspect of life, there's really no single reason or solution for the threats to wildlife in our state or our country or even in our world. But when you try to identify the tipping points as one thing, we tend to miss the actual cause and identify just a symptom. So I'd like to kind of unpack part of that for the reasons, and then we can go into an overview. I have a wildlife center, but the fact is that we deal with people mostly. So, and so do our patients, and so do the birds that you care about and love. So this is, let's go on and see some of the hazards of birds. Okay. So some of the challenges, I have a little bit of a delay here, but that's okay. Some of the challenges in sharing our society with native species is on the increase annually. And some of these are acts of nature, and that would include storms. Nest trees and trees are destroyed, and sometimes we get the little ones from there. And people don't realize perhaps that, you know, there was a nest in the tree, and during cleanup, we admit a lot of patients. There's loon groundings, and those are not only just when they land on asphalt due to storms or due to a wet condition, but we also have a situation that we're working on now that is icing at altitude. And that means that when we have those super cold times, and we have a rainstorm or raining at least at ground level, at altitude it's often much colder. So the loons themselves are icing. They're developing an ice layer around themselves, and they come down pretty heavily, unfortunately. They basically fall from altitude and crash. So often those birds are injured pretty severely, but with broken keels and so on. But that's just another act of nature, a storm that causes that. Black fly infestations are something that we're seeing more and more of, and this is usually in the northern part of the state, but it can occur anywhere. They're They usually come out, and we're not sure why the increase in black fly, but there's so many reasons, whether it's climate change or different pHs of the waters or that sort of thing. We're not 100% sure, but they really cause a problem around bodies of water, and that includes loons, especially. Sometimes loons are nesting already. Black flies come and they really can't continue. So that's been a problem. And we actually had a problem this year in the southern Wisconsin with our only barn owl nest, and black flies played a real hazard with those youngsters. And actually I have them in rehab here at this time. Flooding, another situation. When floods happen, whether loons are nesting or some of the birds that nest close to the water are nesting, they can be overcome by the flood waters and, of course, destroyed, or if someone finds them, brought into rehab. Wildfires, another situation that is a natural act of nature and is a problem, a challenge for wild species. So I don't have a pointer here because I'm not controlling my own. Wait, can you see that? Can you see my pointer or no? So what we have here is a little hummingbird, and she came in as a tiny tot, and it was a storm that took out the tree that she was in, and people found her as they were doing cleanup. And she's doing really well. She's flying and getting ready to leave. A lot of baby birds are admitted during that period of time, whether, species, depending on when the storm occurs and, what kind of habitat they're in, that sort of thing, as to how they're found or when they're found. This is a little Cooper's hawk, but often birds of prey are affected by this. And they, when the nest trees come down, they also come down, of course, and are often not found for quite a while beforehand. Okay, next slide. So a lot of the problems that we see are caused from human activity, and a lot of it's accidental, and that would include power line hits. We see a lot of that in trumpeter swans and the large species, pelicans, white pelicans. We've had a lot of power line hits with white pelicans, particularly as they're going into migration. Prescribed burns, depending on where it is and if it's during active nesting. Sometimes it can be people can kind of check to see if there's any special species nesting or that sort of thing, but they are affected by it. Building projects. And this is, while I have termed it accidental, it's something that, of course, annoys me pretty much. So, if a building project is coming up, anything that's, that's nesting in that area, of course, is going to be in jeopardy for it. And then convenience. I think that probably, as a wildlife rehabilitator and educator, that's probably my strongest annoyance, is because somebody, a duck is nesting in a courtyard or something of a motel or a hotel, and they knew it was there and people liked it a lot until it was getting to the point of the baby's hatch, and then they don't know what to do, and they're all enclosed and they can't take them out, and the mother flies off, so we end up with a baby. So that's an accidental thing, sort of, but with a little thought, it could probably be prevented. Okay, next slide. So some are human-related injuries, and I have a question mark on accidental, because with, I think, education or with some thought or pre-thought, these things kind of can be prevented. So cutting trees, everyone is, summer comes to Wisconsin and everyone's excited because, summer's here or spring is here, and that's a wonderful thing. We've gotten through the long winter, and suddenly it feels good to be outside, and so we're cutting shrubs and we're cutting trees, and cutting them early in the spring is one thing. But once nesting starts or migration has arrived, and especially some of our really sensitive species, cutting the trees is a bit of a hazard. And we end up, with youngsters or with the adults sometimes that don't leave the nest, and then they fall down. Cutting fields, cutting hay. It used to be that we would cut hay twice a year, twice a summer, and now it's become popular to cut fields or long grass 3 times a year. And that I know that might have some reasons as far as farming occurs, but a lot of our ground nesters, including harriers, short-eared owls, those species, and bobolinks, are put in jeopardy with those. And I would like to, I think sometimes, and I talk with farmers or I talk with landowners, and it's become kind of a habit or keeping up with the Joneses sort of thing, to cut the field, even though you're not going to use the hay or you're not going to utilize that. So I think that I'd like to make a distinction between a farmer who is needing to cut it for their economy or for their cattle, and then someone who is cutting it just because it seems like everyone else is doing it, and that's that's not a great reason to do that. But making the distinction is important, and I think that the landowner can do that and do that well if they know the cost of cutting. Hit by vehicles. We have a lot of birds that are hit by vehicles. Usually it's an accident. Lately, I will say probably since COVID, COVID changed a lot of our social structure and a lot of our behaviors for some reason. And we're seeing a lot more purposeful hits and, run over families of ducks, geese. We had another situation where a family of snipes were run over, probably by on purpose. And I know people do that with turtles as well. Fishing lures and fishing lines. This is a problem that can be prevented, and it's not a matter of people fish, and that's wonderful, and if a line breaks, that's a problem. Fix it and then save the line back and the lures. If something is broken, don't just leave it sit, because while monofilament line is extremely good for fishing, the lines don't break. But when wildlife becomes involved with it, it also doesn't break. And so we get a fishing line around baby bald eagles, around loons, around a lot of species, osprey, because they're bringing a fish back, or they get entangled. Sometimes we even had a robin who was entangled because the line was hanging in a tree, and then he became entangled in that. So it's something that people can work on, and it is an action item that I think even children, take your kids out and walk around the lake or walk around a pond and pick up that fishing line and lures. It's a thing that everybody can do to help and to feel like they've had been part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Okay. So there's human caused also because of lack of knowledge, and we try very hard to educate, and I know most of the people on this webinar do as well, because it matters to you. But there's again, it's become kind of a society, a myopic society, I term it, because we're looking at really what it does for us, or that sort of thing. So toxic sprays, rodent poisonings. There's many names for them. There's herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. Fungicides especially are difficult for hummingbirds. We have a lot of hummingbirds coming in convulsions, and they don't survive because they're so very tiny. And people see aphids on their flowers, and they want to spray them, or funguses, and they don't realize that some species, tiny species, actually eat a lot of insects, and that goes along with hummingbirds, and a lot of our very sensitive avian species eat insects, especially during nesting season or when the babies are growing. Mosquito yard service. That's probably one of my trigger points at this point. We see a lot of mosquito spraying in yards. People want to believe, and actually, especially around lakes, it's really ill-advised, and I don't understand why it's still allowed. But because it goes into the groundwater, it goes into the lake. Some people will say that it's a natural occurring item and that, it's nature, it's natural, so it doesn't have any pesticides. And I have to say that if it's natural, in yards that are sprayed with this, adjoining yards, we admit a lot of patients that have pesticide poisoning. They're convulsions, it's a neurotoxin, and they usually don't survive. One of the problems is that, we get adults that are dying. And of course, they fed the chicks the same thing. So even if people find the chicks after the adult has succumbed, they're usually not savable. So it really is an issue. In that top picture, there's a, let's see, that's a little barred owl, and you'll notice there's blood around the mouth. And unfortunately, rodent poisoning causes internal bleeding. Now, years ago, we used to have rodent poisoning that was the warfarins, and they have caused bleeding, but there was an antidote for them. And we could, if we got a bird in that was bleeding, we could treat them and they would recover. However, the new rodent poisonings, or not new, but the last 10 years or so, called one bite, are made of different products. And these don't go away. They're stored in the liver. And even if we can get them to stop bleeding initially, it comes back. And, it's one bite kills them. So it's always fatal. There's nothing we can do for it. So it's really frustrating. There's a lot of things you can do to prevent, rats and mice from, being in your yard or being in your garage or whatever. But people tend to go for the easy treatment, and that's a problem. Treatment for grubs, and I know that with some of the grubs, the treatment of the tree for the larva is important, but it does kill woodpeckers, and they eat grubs. And in fact, we got one in last night that was poisoned by the very same thing. Someone had treated a tree in the area, and we have a little sapsucker that very low in weight, and is dying because of it. So those are things that, again, just giving it some forethought, maybe talking to your neighbors, talking to your family about some of the problems that might occur. And maybe if people knew, I find that if people are informed, they're much better about it, and they kind of understand the process, as opposed to just, you can buy these down at Walmart, you can buy them anywhere, so therefore they're safe in their mind. And of course they're not safe. They're not safe even for us, because you've probably noticed the some of the toxins that suddenly are on the TV saying, if you use this 10 years ago, you may have a problem with tremors or those sorts of things. And indeed, it takes longer in our species for these things to occur. Our life moves more slowly than wildlife, and their generations move more quickly. So it takes longer for it to be manifested in the human body, but we certainly see it in the wildlife. Next slide. So this is perhaps a shocking photo, and I have to say that it's the table is kind of loaded with bald eagles and osprey and red-tailed hawks and other species that are protected, of course. That photo was taken 2 years ago, and I was reaching my point of getting very frustrated with the number of shootings that had occurred. The number of shootings is going up just rapidly, and we haven't seen as many this year. I think because our intake is down because of avian influenza. And I made a real statement, I think, publicly and in the press last year about it, hoping to try to get people to at least express dismay about it. So people didn't think those, people that were shooting didn't think they were, such a big deal, or, that it was such a great thing to go out and, conquer this predator who, a bald eagle or something, by shooting it. And we have had less this year, but last year it was really devastating. Trumpeter swans, our state spent a lot of money reintroducing trumpeter swans, and Raptor Education Group was participated and helped in that project too. So it is pretty personal to us, but we had 7 swans shot last year, and it was pretty devastating, actually. This is a bald eagle that was shot, and you can see, I don't have the bird, it was dead when it arrived, but you can see it was really devastated and shot, sort of full on. These aren't accidental, which is, I guess, a statement that needs to be said. Next slide. So these are human caused, and there's a lot of things that are human caused now. I think in the past we used to have, a few people who were annoyed with the Cooper's hawk and would shoot it. And if you have bird feeders, sometimes, that's understandable. I mean, they do take birds. But shooting a bald eagle, and this one was shot in the face, you have to be pretty close. You have to be, if it's an accident, and I've had some people say, oh, it was accidental. Really? I don't know a lot of people that don't know what a bald eagle looks like. I mean, pull out a dollar bill, it's right there, It's our country's bird, and yet in 2021, we had 23 patients that were illegally shot, including 12 bald eagles and 7 trumpeter swans, 3 osprey, and a peregrine falcon was included early this year as well. And as far as I understand, none of these birds, there was no prosecution. No one was even reprimanded, as far as I understand. And we did get all the information to the wardens, and they say they can't find anyone. I think that the agencies are having a harder time with prosecutions, especially about guns, and I think that we're seeing that in our own society as well. So perhaps there's that's related. I'm not sure, but what I do know is that things have to change. We still have the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, although it was weakened a bit ago. I understand that it's back up to full protection now, but with no prosecutions. And I think Wisconsin has had very few prosecutions in the last decade. In fact, people I've checked, and people have said, "Oh yes, there was a pelican that was shot one place, and they got a fine." Well, that's great, but we, the public, need to be aware of that and try to make them accountable for it, and to try to get more people realizing that it's not a good thing, and it happens and it shouldn't. In that tally from 21, none that didn't include any game birds. No Cooper's hawks or crows were included in that, and we had many of those that were shot as well. So, but these are just the kind of the prime birds that, that shouldn't be shot, that shouldn't be made an example of like, oh, I'm going to shoot this is a Canada goose and it's a trumpeter swan. Honestly, if you don't know the difference between a trumpeter swan and a goose, you probably shouldn't be carrying a gun. That's kind of a big thing to know. So again, very, very few prosecutions. And that's a concern for me. And I think it should be a concern for all of us that are interested in wildlife and want to help get that respect level of wildlife back up where it needs to be. So that's kind of my idea about shootings. But there is no excuse, especially for these very visible species. Next slide. So, cat or dog caught. We have had a huge rash of cat caughts. We get several a day often. And I think that sometimes cat owners if they don't see that, a cat doesn't bring it to the door like they might a mouse or sometimes cats bring presents, to their owners, that they think that it doesn't occur. But especially during our breeding season or when the chicks are little and not capable of flying away, cats are absolutely devastating to wildlife. We see them, as I say, we see it all the time. One of the hard parts is seeing the adults that are killed, protecting their families or on the nest, and then they aren't there to feed the little ones or to teach them. And it always amazes me how owners are they don't feel a sense of responsibility, which I don't understand. And some even think it's funny. We had one lady that told one of our transporters that she gives us a lot of business, and she had 6 birds that were sent in with a transporter from an hour and a half away, cat caught by her cats. And yes, they are outside, and she thought it was quite funny, actually. So there is that mentality as well. The trap, neuter, and release doesn't work. The cats live for a long time, especially if they're being fed. Now, if they're outside and running about, they don't live as long. They do have more problems. But we now have colonies where people are feeding them and maintaining them in sort of insulated buildings and so on and so forth. And again, that's a choice, and that's fine, except they're not native. And I feel like if there's nothing wrong with someone taking care of cats and keeping them so they're not euthanized or trying to place them. However, have them in a building, or have them in an area where they can't get out, where they're not feral. That will be safer for them. And wildlife, I mean, we have to support our wildlife, and it's not running out, and it's not, they're in buildings and that sort of thing. So I think it's a matter of responsibility. And this is something where members of the public should get involved. Express your opinion. We have become kind of a society of people who don't want to hurt someone's feelings or don't want to say anything. And I think that people, if they're in this situation, should at least be aware that their cat or their dog is doing damage, and they need to try to, again, take responsibility for the fact that they're causing damage, and they are not native, and these are native. There is a difference, and we need to make people feel more responsible, and I thank them for that. We certainly do here, and we certainly are grateful when people have a dog on a leash and not running out after little geese, and then the parent, of course, comes and tries to protect them, or swans, and that has happened this year as well. So it's a matter of responsibility. Next slide. So here's a big one. That's kind of new the 4th of July, which just occurred. Fireworks are really a disaster for so many species, especially on our sensitive lakes. I think years ago, we used to have the displays that were from, the cities would, and they would have these, large displays, and people would watch them, and it would be wonderful. Yes, they would be noisy, but they would be beautiful and that sort of thing. But they were on the 4th of July, or they were on whatever celebration was going on. Now, there are a lot of illegal fireworks going on, but they're not controlled. We know they're illegal. The people know they're illegal, but they're not controlled. And that seems to me to be, why. I don't understand that. And unfortunately, people are being injured because of them, because often those with the fireworks are children or teenagers who are kind of running amok and becoming injured and injuring the wildlife around them, dogs, whatever, vets that, have PTSD. I mean, this is a disaster for them as well. So these are some of the things that we have seen recently. Explosives catapulted into eagle nests. And this time of year, our eaglets are just preparing to leave the nest about the 4th of July. So they're, 8-9 weeks, they're getting ready, they're rowing their wings, and they're getting ready to fly. And what happens is when these explosives are catapulted into the eagle's nest, it's at night, of course, because people are celebrating at night. And the eagles panic. They are not birds that can see at night. And they jump because they're very close to fledging at this point. And they hit everything, branches, everything on the way down, and of course crash land. Now, to make matters worse, often they're burned before that happens. We had an eaglet that the beak was burned, melted actually from the heat of the explosive. And sometimes they're blind if it gets on the eye. So it's not it's not an innocent sort of thing. Wildlife is injured by it, and I hate to even think about the warblers and some of the smaller species that are nesting in these sensitive areas that are suddenly terrified by these things. Another thing that happens is the fireworks goes on and on and on for weeks. Here it starts about the second week of June, and it continues on our lakes, through the first part of August, and sometimes even a bit later. So we have that long span of time where, if it was one night, it would be one thing, but, it's continued, and it really is, it's a situation where, if everyone was celebrating, and that would be wonderful, yay, but it continues, and it's on our sensitive lakes and habitats, which is really discourteous to us that live here, as well as Wisconsinites. I mean, Wisconsin's known for our wildlife. So we have folks come in from out of town or out of state, and they're having a good time in our sensitive habitats, but being very destructive, perhaps without realizing it. But I think they need to be reminded. The percussive effects of loons when they're diving causes disorientation and can kill them. We see loons that are up on the shore, and the youngsters who hatch about the 4th of July, are up on land, and they're disoriented, and of course they're predator bait at that point in time. Loons can't walk, so they're hit by cars. I mean, all kinds of things happen, and of course our loon population is decreasing. We have a real problem with our loon population, and we're just starting to realize how much. The photos that are here, the one closest to the left are this is a young loon, and the down was melted on him because of the heat of the embers that were falling, actually from fireworks, not from an explosive. This was from actual fireworks, and his eyes were burned, and we see big gashes on them where they're trying to get rid of the heat and get rid of the embers that have fallen on them. So it's not an innocent thing, and it's something that we all need to again have a part of, at least making people aware that it is a problem, and our sensitive species are important to us. Boats are an issue. Jet skis. People come into town from other places, and they get on boats, and jet skis and these wake boats are a real issue too, because the youngsters are not able to overcome that wake, and often drowned or are killed. But people somehow, when they get out on a lake and they're celebrating, they think that it's all wonderful and fun and games, and they go chase loons. The loons will get out of the way. I mean, we're told that over and over. But if they have babies, they're not going to leave their chicks. And I can't tell you how many adults we've had lose legs, which of course is a fatal injury, be cut in half. That was 2 years ago. And was alive, crazily enough, and trying to still protect chicks. And it was just awful. But we are seeing more and more accidents, which aren't really accidents, by people not respecting our wildlife, and that needs to at least be addressed. Next slide. So lead poisoning, I could actually do and have done, whole webinars on lead poisoning, and I would be very happy to do that again. I have so many pictures, and I feel like I've talked about it for years and years and years without too much movement forward in trying to change ammunition to copper. Full copper. We are not anti-gun. We are not anti-hunting. What we are is, use something that's safe. Use something that's safe for wildlife as well as for your families. And this is a loon that swallowed lead sinkers. For us to have surgery to get that out, and it takes surgery. You can't do open an abdomen on a loon. So you have to go do lavage surgery through the mouth, which is a very complicated process, and then treat them with a very expensive EDTA. It's an expensive process for us, for wildlife rehabilitators that have an eagle that's lead poisoned, and about 25% of our eagles come in with lead poisoning, and we do about 100 a year, and it costs between $500 and $2,000 just in medication alone to treat them and to chelate them from lead poisoning. So it's a very expensive proposition for us, and we constantly hear that lead bullets are less expensive than copper, and that's true. They are some less expensive, but we need to realize what we're doing, and I'm not sure that it's fair for wildlife rehabilitators to take on all the cost of this as well. And another thing that is rarely addressed, and I'm not sure you can see in this, but we do work with hunters a lot. Many of my birds, as I say, we do about 100 bald eagles a year. They're hunters. We are definitely not anti-hunting. We get venison from hunters that want to donate it to us, and we have a program called Have a Heart, whereas the hunter, when he's gutting his deer, can take the heart and can save it for us. Especially if they don't use lead, or if they're using bow and arrow. And the heart is intense muscle meat, and it's very good for our birds. It doesn't have fat on it. Our birds cannot eat fat. They don't do well on diets of fat, and it makes sense because wild animals aren't usually typically fat unless somebody's feeding them. So we like to cooperate with hunters in that way. So if you can see in here, and I apologize, I don't know how well you can see the slide, but you see that there's some lead in these venison chops. We see that a lot. Sometimes people give us venison that's been professionally prepared, like this has, and they assume that the butcher, cuts all this out. But the fact is that lead is a very soft metal, and it fragments into looking like a snowstorm inside of an animal. So you can't see it. Animals can't taste it. And what you're looking at are fragments. You're looking at something that looks like paint chips. And to poison a human child, you need a paint chip size, about the size of a grain of rice. So that's not a lot. Lead is very, very toxic. And this is something that we've known for eons. I mean, the Roman society failed because of lead pipes. When we do have something better, we need to do better. We need to learn from those past mistakes. And I think, to me, it's always amazing that people don't realize they're passing this lead on to their children. They're eating it. It does cause learning disabilities. It causes aggression. Isn't that interesting? And it causes a lot of things in people. So, I think it's worth thinking about that, we may be using, changing lead from lead ammunition is important for more than just wildlife. I think it's important for our families as well. And again, I would be happy to do an entire hour on lead poisoning. We see so much. Most of our loons that come in have lead poisoning or have background levels of lead. So we do maybe 20 loons a year, sometimes more, and we have lead poisoning. We do 100 eagles a year, and at least 25% have critical lead poisoning, and often the others have background levels. So it is a serious problem, not only with eagles, because those are the ones that are most visible, but it's in many species, including Canada geese. If people are supposed to use steel shot, but often don't, and then that's a problem. Next. So I guess to me, when we talk about problems with wildlife and some of the hazards for them, there's so many, and that pot of hazards is growing. We need to do better. And I think that our agencies have, for whatever reason, whether it was initially political, and that may be, but I think we need to get back on track to be more responsible and to have, I guess the word is respect. Perhaps we don't have that in our society as much as we should. But I think we, the public, can do so much. And in fact, I think it is the public that will have to. So I'm hoping that everybody who's listening to this today can decide to, maybe start speaking up, or start doing some education on these topics, because again, the agencies are, for whatever reason, not. We are finally addressing lead poisoning in our state a little bit as far as hunting goes, but for a long time, even our wardens and DNR employees couldn't talk about lead, and I think that's perhaps changed, within the last couple of years, but not until then. So we have a question. Yes, steel is not toxic. It is not a soft metal. It is not toxic, and that's why it's required for waterfowl. Now, not everybody does what's required, unfortunately. So therefore, we have that, and I would and copper bullets for hunting deer are great. They're actually they don't fragment. They go through the animal, and so it doesn't fragment. A much better, much more humane kill, as a matter of fact. And they are some more expensive, but I think that it's a cost that's worth it. One other situation that we're seeing is that with semi-automatic guns, these guns can shoot 40 to 45 bullets a minute, and we're seeing people using them to hunt. Now, I hunted as a young woman, and I'm from a family of hunters, so to me, there's a distinction between hunting and killing, and then when something has 45 bullets in it, in their lead, they leave it, they take off the horns, and then they leave it in the field or in the woods, and it's accessible to wildlife. We're seeing so much more lead poisoning now, and the levels are higher. I think that to me is a real issue as well. I'm very sorry, my starling has just joined us. I don't know how he got out, but this is Beavis, everybody. He does talk. You may hear him saying some interesting things. So anyway, hey, what you doing? So anyway, I think it's a society problem, but we that care have to be the voice to make a difference, and rather than just looking the other way when there's things that come up on our ballot. We need to make a difference and ask questions. I'd be very happy to share everything I can with you. Sometimes we don't talk too much about it because, quite honestly, we're pretty tired and we're pretty exhausted with trying to get the word out, and yet it seems to go nowhere. So but it's going to come down to all of us, I think. There's no one problem with wildlife. It's a big problem. We need to gain respect for it. We need to start doing the right thing. And I know that sounds a little maybe innocent perhaps, but in fact, I think that is it. And we, the public, are the people who are going to make the difference. We can't rely on agencies because they have been weakened, and it has become political, and that's not right. That's just not right. So I would like to open it. We have, next slide. I would like to open a discussion. We have a few more minutes, but I want to say to you that wild ones really need the assistance. More wildlife centers are closing all the time. There is no state or federal funds for us. We're all nonprofits. And when we deal with some of these really huge issues, including lead poisoning, which is very costly, it's a huge burden, cost burden on us. And if there were less of it, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, I think that, that would be such a benefit for everything and everybody. But they need everybody. They need you to prevent these things and to perhaps be more aware of what's going on. The snowy owl that's in this photo was shot last year, and we were able to get him back on the wing, and he was released. But when snowy owls, rough-legged hawks, and bald eagles are shot, wholesale, I mean, it's not an unusual thing at all. It used to be. When I first started, we would have maybe 3 shootings a year, and they were usually, some kind of outlier that, didn't really know what they were doing or didn't care, or, were going on some myth or legend that their family had talked to them about when they were young, and, afraid that, their child was going to be seized by a bald eagle or something like that. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It seems to be a case of, I can do it. I'm not going to get caught. I'm a tough guy if I'm going to do this. And I think it's important, again, that we curtail that as much as we possibly can. So again, I have a wildlife center, but we deal with people all the time, and so do our patients. We've kind of become a society of the myopic, um, and agencies, again, they're charged with protecting the wild species, but they need to demonstrate more responsibility, and we need to hold them accountable for that responsibility. Wildlife belongs to all of us. It belongs to all of us. It doesn't belong to an agency. It belongs to us. And it's up to us to help protect it. So I appreciate that. So is there anybody have any questions? Don't know how we can get questions. Hi.
So everyone, please, if you want to submit a question, you can also either unmute yourself and just ask, or you
Yes.
can type in a question. And we do have one question so far.
Okay.
Specifically, do emerald ash borer treatments specifically harm birds?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I really don't know the answer to that. You know what, one thing that we're seeing, and that has been more evident, is that sometimes it makes some of these things make birds weaker. And I think that maybe their immune system, is affected. We're seeing more anomalies, colored discoloration in feathers, or white feathers growing, stress bars, coming up when there shouldn't be. There should be adequate food available. So there are a lot of small things that are starting to become big things, and I sense that there's probably underlying factors that are maybe starting to show up. Yeah.
Don't be shy, folks. You guys are still on here. Please ask your questions either in the chat box or unmute yourself. This is your time to ask any questions.
I appreciate that. I think, as I say, I think that I was very excited to be able to address everyone tonight, because this is the population that are going to to be able to make a difference, because we care. Caring is the first step, and we have to not only care, but we have to be able to put ourselves out there to make a difference, and that's important. I think that we will all feel a little more in control of our environment if we do that. And I would, if I can help in any way, people want to come to visit us, boy, I would love that. Just contact me directly, and I'd be happy to share our work with you.
One more question. So Sue asked that she has an Airbnb. Do you have a printout that she could provide to people who are staying there?
I have print. You mean of this project, of this?
Like hazards to birds, I'm guessing.
Oh, hazards. We do have a lot of printouts, and everything from cats, cats in the wild to pesticides. People, I think it's become so commonplace they just don't think about it anymore. As I say, when you can buy it at Walmart, it's safe, right? And anyway, I can send you flyers, or it might be good for you to write me an email. It's marge@raptoreducationgroup.org, and let me know what you're interested in and kind of where your Airbnb is located. So some things are regional. Marge, MARGE, at raptoreducationgroup.org, O-R-G. You can catch up with us on Facebook. We share a lot on Facebook. There are a lot of, we try to update almost daily if we can, if we're not too busy. And, it's a good place to stay in touch. Land O'Lakes, really an important place, because it is sensitive. And I know you have a lot of visitors there. So, yeah.
Do you have, yeah, you're reading it too. Sorry.
Okay. So I don't have a sheet. But I think that one of the things that we see here, and it's become, as I say, years ago it was common to have two cuttings of hay, and that has changed to have three cuttings. Of course, people have put more product in their land as well, and they put more nutrients so it grows faster and that sort of thing. But cutting it twice a year will allow the migratory species that come in to breed and to get their babies off. Cutting it 3 times a year, that means the first cutting happens in June. And, aren't allowed to breed. I mean, they aren't allowed to actually be successful in breeding. Often harriers, short-eared owls. We don't have any short-eared owls here in Langley County anymore. We used to. And we don't have a lot of harriers because of our new haying projects. And I don't think that people realize, how destructive they are. But in fact, if it's a farmer or someone who's counting on it and it's necessary, I understand that. But there are a lot of people who have land and just see that their neighbors are cutting, and they think it's a thing. They think that they need to cut when, on that schedule, even though they're not using hay. So I think that, we need to, again, not be leaders and not followers. It's important.
And one other thing, Greg, about haying, there are guidelines that different not municipalities, but different states have put out to read about changing the frequency of haying. I'm pretty sure one of them is New York, that recommends as different windows for the two cuttings. That if you wanted to reach out to me, I can forward those as well.
Yeah, thanks.
We
have sheets here with the Department of Natural Resources, but I'm trying to grab as much as I can. The other birds are like you see, meadowlarks and grasshopper sparrows, for instance, are huge, and we have a government area next to a conservancy. And one day after somebody's observing newly hatched meadowlarks, the farmer goes and cuts the field. So I'm looking. They're receptive here for facts. So. Just like Marge said, that's great credibility too about the fact that you've been a hunter before too. So
yes,
thanks for your perspective.
I think that often when you're a conservationist, people think that you're anti-hunting, and that is not true. As I always say, most of my patients are hunters. In one way or another. But I think to do it well, to do it for the safety of other wildlife and your own families. I'm amazed that we're not doing more lead testing in children. We really need to, but the concentration is on lead in water, and that's a big thing because of lead pipes. But we're eating it, and especially years ago when my father hunted, it would be, he was a big promoter of do it well, and you honor your kill, and 1-shot kill, or 2 if you absolutely need to. I've passed it on to my grandchildren, and I'm really delighted when my grandson brings a deer over and he goes, 1-shot, grandma. And a couple of years ago, there's a lot of misinformation about copper bullets also, and that they don't kill and that sort of thing, which is ridiculous. They're more strong. They don't fragment. And my grandson was in an area that he was, going to shoot. It was winter, and he was pulled up on a 8-point buck, and he was really excited. And his intended wife was sitting with him, and I mean, it was a thing, right? So he shot, and as he shot, a doe walked behind the buck. He got both of them. They both dropped instantly. He called me from the field, just babbling. I could hardly understand what was going on. He goes, Grandma, I got 2. And I'm like, do you have tags for both? That's what he goes.
That was the next question.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, that's a grandma question, right? What do you mean you got to? And he said, you know what? They dropped right there. There's no, running around, tracking them. I mean, there's less crippling now. And then, there's less dying in the woods if they would use copper bullets, one, as opposed to, I mean, if someone's shooting off 40 bullets, I can understand that it's more costly. It is more costly, but not that much if you're using one or you're a good shot, which if you're a hunter, there's pride in that. There's pride in being a hunter, not a shooter and not a
An area
killer.
weapon versus a point weapon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I bow and arrow hunted with my dad when I was with a with a recurve, right? So, but I think it's a matter of perspective, and I think a matter of respect. We need to get back to less that we're entitled. We need to be able to do this because we're entitled. And more about being good stewards, and whatever that means. If it means you're a little uncomfortable with some mosquitoes around, well, do what you used to do. I'm really shocked that our towns in our area by lakes are allowing the mosquito spray to go on, because they're right. I mean, they spray right up to the lake, and it's this is our Wisconsin. This is our Wisconsin. And the thing that escapes a lot of politicians is wildlife's a huge part of our economy. And if you're not seeing loons on these lakes, you might as well be in somewhere else. We have a lot of reason to be have pride in our area. We have a lot of reason to appreciate what we have, and sharing it is something we can do. But people have to respect also, what we do and what we have. Otherwise, it's soon going to be, unfortunately, not here. Our loons are in real trouble, and I work with several loon biologists, and it's devastating, really devastating. Yeah, and mosquito guys, right? It doesn't make sense, and yet I get people calling me and saying, "Yeah, well, I have the right to. I want to go outside and not get bit." Then live somewhere else. I don't know what to tell you. You want to enjoy our wonderful Wisconsin and not get bit by mosquitoes. I'm so sorry. That's not reasonable.
They wouldn't be Wisconsin.
Right, I know. I mean, we have to talk about our mosquitoes because, we survive them. It makes us tough.
And I will, I'll work with Marge and get some links to information for you guys and put it as part of the follow-up. I will also put the haying information in there, and if when we send out the recording. So it'll be a couple days, we'll get it all together, but everybody will get those, and feel free to share them with anyone. And I'm sure Marge will also include her email. So if you have more follow-up questions, feel free to ask her. And we'll be talking about some more hazards both later and then next year too. So stay tuned for more of those, and we'll be sure to be talking about pesticides again. Yeah, unless people have more questions.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I feel like I was a little down today, but I have to say that we see so much of this that, our staff, why are loons in such a dire position? Well, there's a number of reasons. First, they've been doing red tide down where they winter in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's been a problem. Lead poisoning, huge here. Fireworks has been, I gotta say, one of the most devastating thing for our loon populations. People don't realize it, but it's and it's because of the way it's used too. We need to we need to change that. We need to be responsible. We need to be respectful. And I don't know. An alternative to spray. Sue, you asked a question about are the wipes. Are you wipes on your personal body? Is that your question? Because that, as long as it doesn't affect the environment, yes, I think that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And you can use whatever on your body. And I'm not a physician, so I can't comment on that. But as long as it's not involved in the environment, or you're not putting it on the lake, or you're not doing things like that, that's fine. But spray, it doesn't make sense, quite frankly, to spray your yard thinking that, yes, on your clothes. But I think that, it doesn't make sense to think that you can spray your yard and it will keep mosquitoes away for a month. Now, anything that does that, that's more scary than anything I know about. And if that really happens, then be very afraid, because that's not normal, and it's just totally unreasonable. Ticks on dogs. People say, well, my dog's got ticks, so they got to spray my yard. Well, get him a collar. I don't know. There's other things to do, and be vigilant, with your own animal. But we need to become more responsible again. We were once. I have a uncle who was a farmer, and when I moved here, he said to me, why don't we have any meadowlarks anymore? And, as he was cutting the third cutting. And I said, because of what you're doing. And he said, well, nobody said that. Well, you have to be a wildlife rehabilitator, you have to understand natural history. I was a biologist. I'm a researcher in my former life. And, I think you have to know that natural history to be able to work with wildlife and accommodate, everything we need to. So, if it doesn't make sense, flee. And okay, that's fine. I don't have a dog. I have grand dogs. I have 3 grand dogs. I have, where's my starling go? I'm looking for my starling, because he does talk, and when he comes down, he says things like, I love you, kiss, kiss, and he sounds like me. So if don't be offended. He also says some other things that are very sweet. But anyway, so he's here somewhere. I just don't know where he is. So anyway, but I think it's been a very difficult few years. First we had COVID, and we didn't have tours. We got a little away from education because of that. But we do a lot of education programs. We do teach these things. We have kids camps that are coming up next 2 weeks. And we do go into every aspect of nature. It's all interconnected, and we talk about that. So I have hope that the children that are coming up will be more responsible and more aware of how important it is. Videos on, I'm sorry, Sue, what videos on what were you asking? That was a question, a chat came on.
Yes, do you?
Okay, what am I talking about now? What was I talking about? I don't know. Responsibility, I don't know. What?
Pictures, videos of this won't, like, for privacy issues, we don't share people's videos of their person. But if you want this discussion, it'll be part of the recording if you would like it. We can send that out. And then also, do you have any YouTube videos or anything that they could go to through your website?
We do have a lot of YouTube videos, and it would probably be on our Facebook. We have a very active Facebook page, Raptor Education Group, and we have videos, everything from feeding our babies to a lot of things, just trying to anything we can do to increase awareness about the world around us, is really important. people who don't have Facebook. For us, it's a really easy, I think you don't have to belong to Facebook personally. You can go to the Facebook to read the page. You don't have to have your own, communicate with people should you not want to, and that's fine. But it's an easy outlet for us, and they are usually, most of the videos are YouTube also, but you can access them through the Facebook, or come visit. Come visit. I don't know where you live, but come on up and you can see the place. And a lot of our patients are education birds. We have tours, and that might be helpful for you.
Also, I just looked, a lot of videos are on YouTube. We'll include that link, but you can also, if you're more of a YouTube person than a Facebook person, there are also YouTube videos. So however you interact with the internet.
Our tours are on site in Anago, Raptor Education Group. We're up in Anago. You can, jump on our Facebook or our website, which actually needs updating in a serious way right now. We are exhausted. We have 300 patients right now, and I have 4 staff, so we're pretty busy, and 6 interns. So.
Well, we'll send out a bunch of information about REGI and how you might get in contact with Marge, where they are, where their videos are, where their Facebook is, how to address these hazards that we're talking about, and things that you can share with other folks as part of the follow-up. And if anything isn't covered as part of that email, please reach out to either me or Marge, depending on who you want to interact with, and we'll track down the rest of the answers too.
And including our information, our flyers and that sort of thing are important. I think that we can't include all the specific information that I think is so important. And you reach people by discussing things. And I was a little nervous to bring things up today because it sounds. I mean, we're exhausted, but we're seeing all these catcalls and. It's pitiful, but, they land in our hands. And I don't know how to, as one of my interns said, how do you make people smarter? How do you make people care? I think that's a better thing. Or feel responsible. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's the question that people have been asking for ages, except it used to come naturally. And now we have an entitled society.
Yeah, we run across that too.
I bet you do. Yeah, I bet you do.
People to do the right thing and how to make it as easy as possible, and it's not always a straight line, and that's.
Well, the questions about, I don't want to. I'm not sure I should do that. My neighbor shoots them, and somebody knows who shot the peregrine. And they don't want to say because, they feel like, I don't want to hurt his feelings. What? What? Yeah, tell me. Well, snowy owls are shot often here in Wisconsin because they're visible targets, not because they're doing harm. And we need to, again, it's a matter of common sense. It's a matter of making people feel like they don't have to kill things to be strong and to be empowered. Hunting and shooting is a privilege. If you're doing it to hunt for food, that's one thing. But if you're doing it to simply kill, then you're part of the problem, not part of the solution.
And I actually organized a duck hunt in my previous life, and one of the things that really struck me was how some hunters really have that ethic and some don't, and like how it's, I don't know how you instill that in everybody. I don't know.
I think that and people are kind of born with caring. Or that's how they learned it when they were young. And, I just I don't know. And when do people stop caring? When did that happen and why? I don't understand. But, it's our society that, as I say, we become myopic and we become entitled, and we need to care again. I hope that we can get to that place again where, where we're all responsible for everything around us, not just, the very things right in your house or something. And, people are not, yeah. I think that that's true. Having photos or information does make people pause sometimes, but sometimes it's amazing how many, I get calls. People come from other states and they say, "Oh, I rented a cabin and there's an eagle's nest on it and the eagle is looking at my dog. What do I do?" And I say, "What kind of dog do you have?" "Oh, black lab." I would look at your dog. I mean, they're intelligent beings. I probably, but now if he has babies, he's probably wondering, if the babies fall, would you let the dog kill his baby? So, that would be an issue. I had a discussion with some people who came on a tour, and, they talked about geese, and their dog kills the geese, and now the adults kill the goslings, and now the adults chase the dog. What's the problem again? We should be congratulating the geese for being such good parents. But anyway, control your animal. Yeah. I don't know. We're missing big pieces of our society, and I don't know how to regenerate that or how to get it back. But I think the answer lies in people that care. Like the Lorax, it's going to take a group of people who care a whole hell of a lot to make changes. And I hope we've got some of those people listening tonight, because you are important. When we do our kids programs and our adventure camps, they go home with a poster that says, "You are the most important person in our world," and it's pictures of our birds. Because they are the future. And I know that's cliche, but in fact, it is true. Often people don't want their kids to look down on them. So if they see, Uncle Larry shooting something, they'll say, "That's protected," or "Why did you do that? It's not hurting you." Well, it's gonna eat, all the cats or whatever. Well, not if they're not feral. I don't know, just saying. So.
Yeah, and to just resonate, to riff on what Marge was saying, there are a lot of studies that show that if you reach out to people you actually know, and that one-on-one connection is the most likely to, especially in our polarized society, to make a difference. So you guys are all all in this. So hopefully you can talk to people who are willing to listen, because as much as I talk about bird hazards, Marge talks even more about bird hazards than I do. As much as we can do that, what really resonates with people who might not share the same opinion is people they know. So people like you guys.
Right. And to be, for people around them to think poorly of them. And I'm not saying poorly, like, don't, shoot them or something. I mean, unless you have to, but anyway, I'm getting, it's been a year, I'll tell you. So anyway, people are, as I say, it's just all I can describe as less responsible. Wildlife belongs to all of us. It doesn't belong to the agency. It's not the DNR's job. It's not, Fish and Wildlife's job. If we see something, we need to make a difference and be part of that solution and help that poor creature that, has a problem or, has been hit by a car and, people are zooming around it on all sides. Be someone who can make a difference even for that little one. Sometimes it takes one. It makes a difference for that one. And the educational component behind it is so important. Some of our patients are, very sad situations and are euthanized, but their stories live on. And I hope that I can make inroads with some people to make a difference, because it's really important, even not for them, but I think for the people doing it, you know, to know that you've made a difference, really important. So go forth, be an army of wildlife army, okay? And always, we're here. So if anybody would like to visit, you know, we have tours. You can call our education line, look on our website. As I say, it's outdated. We also need a new web person, which we can't afford. But anyway, you know, come visit and let me know you're coming. Because if I don't know you're coming, I might not be here, I might not be available. So please let me know. And if you want to be part of this whole thing, please do. We need more people, not less. A lot of wildlife centers have closed. A lot of them are taking very, very few things. That's why we're bulging here. We have 27 eagles in care right now. As well as, you know, so many other patients, everything down to a hummingbird, you know, so we're busy, but hopefully we're making a difference. And most of that's through education. So thank you all. I appreciate being here. And if you want flyers or anything, let me know. You got my email. Okay.
Thanks, Marge. And we'll send around a lot of information to everyone else. But thank you for being here. And yeah, have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye, guys.